Killzone Shadow Fall is probably one of the best examples of a good franchise ending on a bad note, and I want to be clear. As a whole, I don't think Shadow Fall is a bad game. The multiplayer, the competitive side, and the co-op, I think you can have a lot of fun in. It's just that the campaign, which I believe was trying to be the main draw, was forgettable and it just kind of fell flat in a number of areas. I'll be honest with everyone. I don't remember anything about Shadowfall's campaign outside of its very rushed and disappointing ending, but because I was reminiscing about other PlayStation franchises that are currently dormant, like Resistance and Infamous, I went back and played Killzone Shadowfall and decided that it probably deserved another look. And this was a rough go. Overall, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the campaign for Shadowfall, but there isn't anything memorable. Visually, this game holds up very well. I was actually pretty impressed because this was a PS4 launch title, and outside of the occasional ambitious animation, like someone getting shot over a railing, this game looks really good. Gameplay wise, the gunplay is solid. I like the fact that there are some weapons that have dual functions, and the inclusion of a controllable drone is a nice touch. The OWL is not a game breaker, and it totally could have been, but instead serves its purpose as an assist unit. The level design found here is really solid, especially those that allow some freedom in how you approach multiple objectives. There's a nice sense of verticality because the OWL is equipped with a zipline, so you can get through levels relatively quickly, well, when the game allows you to. The issue with the gameplay is that while everything is functional and works as intended, there's nothing that really stands out. If you've played a first-person shooter in the 2010s, this game will feel very familiar. There are a number of different on-rail sections and QuickTime events, so there's nothing here that could be considered revolutionary. In fact, there's nothing here in Shadowfall that really stands as an evolution for the franchise, so that's going to be disappointing for some. The stealth found here in this game is just okay, and the suppressed weapons unfortunately don't sound suppressed. In fact, they're really loud, which is weird because there's an entire level in which you're going to acquire a suppressed machine gun and you're going through and trying to rescue all these hostages, but I'm fairly certain that the moment you fire this gun, the hell gas can hear me from across multiple platforms because that weapon is loud as hell. And I think that's what's the most frustrating gameplay-wise, because you play a Shadow Marshal, an elite covert assassin for the ISA, and my expectation was that Shadowfall would be a title that heavily emphasizes stealth, but for some reason, you don't come equipped with a silenced pistol, and stealth sections can devolve very quickly into full-scale firefights with no consequences for doing so. In fact, there are probably too many firefights in this game, and some go on for far too long. The best level in Killzone Shadowfall sees the main character Kellen escaping from his cell with the assistance of Echo. This is a really fun section because you start out weaponless, and you're still recovering from being tortured, so you're in this really vulnerable state. You'll have to follow orders from Echo to escape, and once you eventually rendezvous, you can then utilize her sniping to take out targets while making your way through the different areas. This was a ton of fun, and even though there were moments where I could have opted for a firefight, it was more engaging to try to complete these objectives undetected. Now, unfortunately, like other stealth levels in Shadowfall, the game then devolves at the end into a survival section in which you have to kill waves of enemies before eventually extracting. This happens multiple times, and we're going to go through all of them. The first time is at the end of the first level where you have to extract and defend multiple waves while, for some reason, this platform is bringing up your ship, and it's going very slowly, so you have to sit there for minutes. It just feels like it goes on forever while you're just killing the same enemies over and over again. It happens again on the ISC Cassandra. You're going to end up fighting all these waves of enemies when you try to escape because you were crashing that station into the sun. This is really cool, by the way. And then happens again when you're at the end of the new Helgen mission. You fight waves of enemies. You're also fighting these like cool looking drones. When you try to extract Dr. Massar, you fight waves of enemies. Again, shocker. Which, by the way, that's the firefight that went on for far too long. I was not happy playing through that section. There's just way too many turrets being thrown at you. It is just a pain in the ass. Another example is when you're at Stahl's base. Echo is trying to hack a door, and you have to defend multiple waves of enemies at different locations, which, by the way, I have to ask this question. Why did it take Echo so long to hack that door? Isn't she the Helgen equivalent of a Shadow Marshal. It felt like she was stalling so that she could eventually betray us, and I wouldn't blame her because she should have been the protagonist, as she was far more interesting than Kellen. The final survival section is found in the last stage, and that one really sucked as well because as you were going through and killing the first couple of enemies that are in this large area, you then have these rooms in the back that open up and all these people come through and they assault you. And then once you kill them, it really feels like, hey, it's over. It feels like there's a small lull, and then there's a whole group that just kind of wanders in as well. You got all these shielded enemies, the minigun guys, the assault troopers. It's like, what is going on? Why won't this end? Luckily, the AI in this game is so stupid that if you just happen to throw out your owl, they will follow that thing instead of just assaulting you. It makes no sense. I don't know how they de-aggro so quickly. I don't really care. But I'm just saying, like, the AI in this game is really, really dumb. Easy to fool, easy to cheese. But these sections that felt like they could have been more because you are this Shadow Marshal, this elite stealth operative, just kind of devolved into these, like, survival modes where I'm like, we don't have to keep doing this. Like, let's get a little bit more diversity here, but that never happens in Shadow Fall, and that's, to me, pretty disappointing now that I think about it. Damn, Shadow Fall was pretty generic now that I've gone back and actually looked at the footage. Like, the set pieces really don't do any favors either for this game. While the visuals are really good in most of these sections, the execution of these set pieces can be very clunky. The biggest and worst offender was when you're trying to stop Tyrion as he escapes on a dropship. Just look at the footage.
Pulsar, get those AA guns offline!
Sir, you need to get the hell out of there! Now!
You're persistent. I respect that. But it's in your nature to lose.
That shit is rough. Kellen should have died if it wasn't for plot armor because Tyrion had him dead to rights and just kind of sat there before he got stabbed in the foot. The gun was still in his hand and he decided to kick him off instead of shooting him in the head. If you think about it, Tyrion obviously missed a golden opportunity. The man somehow fumbled a 28-3 lead. All he had to do was pull the trigger when he had the gun pointed at his head the first time. Instead, he just waited for him to look down, grab his knife, and stab him in the foot. It was so clunky that I thought something else was going to occur, but no, you just get kicked off and you fall all the way down, land on this like little cushion, and then you survive to fight another day. Sure. This brings me to my biggest pet peeve with the campaign, and that was the narrative. Shadow Fall attempts to tell a complex story, but it fails. And I think the fault primarily lies with the characters. Kellen is a pretty boring protagonist, even though he has a relatively interesting backstory. His death at the end of the game was a surprise, but that moment ultimately felt flat because it's hard to connect with a character who was just following orders. Kellen had the vibe of an NPC. That's harsh, but that's how I feel. Sinclair's turn at the end felt rushed. Not saying it wasn't earned or anything, but you just didn't have enough time to process it because by that point the game was over. And there really wasn't much to him to begin with other than he was a decorated Shadow Marshal and could deliver one hell of a crazed monologue.
Stand down. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Watch it, Lucas. Trust is easily lost in this game, and you don't get it back.
She helped me escape. I'd be dead otherwise.
You're gonna side with her over me? She told you she's gonna kill Massar. The one thing we need. Look, the Black Hand, Vasari, Stahl, there's no difference. Their agenda is the same. To wipe us out. It's always been that way. You know that more than anyone. Christ's sake, your father paid with his life. You're gonna let his death mean nothing?
They are innocent people!
No! They're not innocent, Kellen. They're complicit. They all are. We have been given a chance. Secure the weapon and Massar. This thing targeted Helghast once. She can do it again.
Echo is by far the most interesting character. She's the daughter of the new Helgen Chancellor. She is a high-level intelligence operative with real stealth capabilities, and she's the one who proposes working with Kellen on behalf of peace between Vetka and Helgen. I liked her character and thought that we would get some more playing time with her, but unfortunately you get one mission at the end and that's it. At least the mission was cool. Every other character in the main cast is unfortunately forgettable. If we're talking about the antagonist, Tyrion isn't threatening and just kind of meets a very underwhelming end. That boss fight, by the way, just really sucked. The stupid spider drones being thrown at you constantly, him kind of hiding in a little corner just waiting to get shot. It was kind of lame. Stahl also meets a super underwhelming end, and even though he was the main antagonist in Killzone 3, he only gets a few minutes of screen time here, and before you know it, he's dead and more than likely vaporized because they blew up his cool super base. Shadow Fall could have been an intense political thriller, but instead ended abruptly as things were starting to kind of pick up and get good. The Sinclair betrayal should have been expanded upon, and you should have had more time with Echo as the protagonist. I feel like the post-credits mission was too quick, and when it ended, you didn't even get the satisfaction of seeing the bullet hit. I mean, who does that? Also, are we left to assume that the assassination of Sinclair would have stopped the war? Seriously, I mean, it would have had the opposite effect, right? Because the Vetkins and Helgens still hate each other. This peace that they're currently sitting in right now is very shaky and more than likely going to blow up at the slightest provocation. And I highly doubt that the ISC believes that Sinclair's assassination was an inside job. And I understand that he was advocating for war during his speech. But let's be real. The moment that that bullet connects, it is all-out war. Vetka is going to blame Helgen, and then they're just going to start throwing blows at each other. I mean, in that sense, it would have set up for the next Killzone. Maybe you get to play as Echo and see how she tries to navigate all of this, like the consequences of her actions. Maybe not, I don't know. But I highly doubt that's going to happen, which sucks because I'm a big fan of this series. I really never bought the hype about this being Sony's Halo killer, but I really, really like the Killzone series. 1 was okay, 2 was great, 3 was really good, and Shadowfall as a follow-up was a disappointment. It's not a bad game, like I said, but I prefer Liberation and Mercenary to this game, if that's saying anything, and those were spin-offs on handhelds. When you're looking at dormant franchises for Sony, you're going to see a contingent of the fan base clamoring for a new Killzone, and I don't blame them. Shadowfall isn't exactly how you want to remember this franchise, and I get it. Guerrilla is currently focused on Horizon and whatever Horizon spin-off they can get their hands on, but Killzone deserves another shot. And at least in the sense of redeeming Shadowfall, because the game had a lot of potential. It just fell flat. And it's kind of how I look at Sly Cooper 4. That game had a lot of potential, but it felt unnecessary, and comparatively, it was not better than its predecessors. And that's basically how it sums up how I feel about Shadowfall. At least Resistance went out on a relatively high note. I really liked Resistance 2. I really enjoyed Resistance 3, and I'm glad that it just ended there. Shadowfall to me was a really cool tech demo for the PS4. It really showed off the visual prowess, all that stuff, but it felt like a slap in the face when you look at the franchise. And I really don't think there's revisionist history that can fix that. Like, I get it. If you want to say Killzone 1 wasn't good, that's fine. But 2 and 3 were pretty damn good. Near great. And then you get Shadowfall, and it's like, this can't be the way it ends. So if, on the off chance, Sony does revive Killzone, I'm all in. I mean, I'm going to be skeptical. I'm going to treat it as the way I treated Dragon Age the Veilguard. But I'm hoping that Sony doesn't bash Killzone the way EA did with Dragon Age. That was pretty poor taste. They could also bring back Infamous 2. I'm just saying, maybe bring back Resistance as well. Look, if they were just to like remaster Killzone 1 and 3 for the PS5, multiplayer included, by the way, because Warzone multiplayer was fantastic, I would be very excited for that. Anything to drown the memory of Shadowfall would help. But let me know what you think in the comments, because that's what's going to do it for this video. If you haven't liked the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.
exist. Through their suffering, we thought we saw our humanity. But this was a mistake. We should have realized then, as we do now, that the Hellcats chose to forsake their humanity long ago. They are an aberration. They do not share our values, and they do not deserve our compassion.